All right, and then if everybody can go on mute, if you're not talking, just to eliminate any feedback, that would be much appreciated. And just remember to unmute when you're ready to talk. So, all right, welcome to the January 13th meeting of our quarterly Visions Northwest group. You'll see the agenda there. I sent that out. Looks like I have Andy on there twice. I was really excited about his participation this morning. Yep, we'll start, just kind of kick it off. We'll do approval of our meeting minutes. We'll go through our partner updates. We'll talk a little bit about some of the just Visions Northwest housekeeping things, RISE, Wood Collaborative updates. And then we'll be welcoming a presentation this afternoon from Kellyanne Blazik. She's the director of WEDC's Office of Rural Prosperity. And then we'll have our just kind of a virtual table discussion. Depending on Kellyanne's availability time-wise, we may move our table discussion up in front of her. She wasn't able to join us until she thought around 11:30 this morning. So we'll just kind of play with the agenda and see where we're at, depending on when she's able to jump on from another meeting that she's on. So I guess to start with, I do need that approval of the October 14th, 2020 minutes.
I'll make a motion.
Okay.
This is Mari. I can second it.
Okay. Thank you, ladies. Okay, that is done. And I will actually let Andy get started. I know he's got a lot of updates regarding the new PPP that's started this week and sent over lots of great slides. So we'll hand it over to Andy here. And then obviously, as always, I think Andy, you do have to go to another meeting. So we'll definitely give some folks time to ask questions after you kind of pour out the information, and we'll go from there. All right.
Sounds
Andy,
good.
Thanks.
Perfect. Thanks, Crystal. Good morning, everybody. It feels like it's been a while, but it's January, and here we go again with PPP and everything else that the government, the SBA has approved. So I got a variety of updates just because they've been rolling out over the last couple of weeks that I'm sure many of you have read and have seen, but we've been able to get a little bit more verbiage on what the SBA is telling us over the last few days. And I know there's going to be more information coming. So, yep, we're in round 2 of PPP. Unfortunately, we're still going at this, and, in conversations that I've had with a few of you, with some bankers, with other economic development officials, this is going to be really important this time. We've been able to, get through, the last 10 months or so, but now that we're in this winter season, especially with a lot of our businesses, the next few months, depending on the weather and everything, is going to be really important for them to, hopefully get through this pandemic before vaccines are rolled out to the general public, before things are open more on a consistent, regular basis. So really maximizing a lot of these PPP dollars and these government programs, along with whatever the state of Wisconsin is going to, bring through, is going to be really important for these small businesses. So just a few updates here, what we have going on today. Obviously, there's a lot of updates on PPP with it being rolled out starting on Monday. The 60-40 usage has changed, quite a bit. If you guys remember correctly from before, it was more of that 75-25, then went to 60-40. Now they've made updates again. So I'll share a little bit about that. A little bit about the first and second round draws and what that's looking like from the CDFI aspect of it, and then also the traditional lenders and credit unions. Some good updates on the economic injury disaster loan, which is really important for our small businesses and entrepreneurs in the area. It's actually going to benefit them in the long run. And then the new program on the shuttered venue operators. So a little bit of information on that, and we're still getting more information on how that's going to be operating. So Crystal, if you can go to the next slide, please. So round 2 of PPP, it launched officially on Monday, January 11th. So there's a couple caveats to this. Is the first draw and the second draw launched Monday and today respectively, but they're only for those community financial institutions. It has not been rolled out to the general bank unions and some other lenders as of yet. From what I am hearing from the SBA, and I'm going to get a little bit more information tomorrow when I have a meeting with them tomorrow morning, is it will be rolled out, I believe, early next week to the general lenders and credit unions that are out there. So if you do have a CDFI or a relative CDFI that's in your area, I believe for us it might be 7 that can do some of the different things with that. I know in the southern Wisconsin, but they are able to make those first draw PPP loans on second draw starting today. The funds are going to roll out or dry up pretty quick. Congress only authorized the SBA to go through March 31st. So really we only have 2.5 months to utilize funds. If it's anything like before, when the first round of PPP came about, it will dry up pretty quickly. I believe it was 13 days from start to finish. Now that there's more of a lesser amount, it probably will run out very quickly. I do know some banks are already taking applications and holding them. So if you do have entrepreneurs that are looking to either apply for the first round or the second round of PPP this time, make sure they talk to their lender immediately. I think that's going to be the biggest thing that we need to take away from this is get them in touch with their lenders so they can figure out what that process is going to be like. You know, when we went through this over the last couple months, back in April, May, June, it dried up very quickly. And then they had to authorize more money for this. So the biggest thing is get them into their banks, get them into their credit unions, whoever their SBA lenders are, in order to access the PPP loans. Crystal, if you can go to the next slide, please. So I've mentioned that there's the first and second draw aspect of it. It's exactly how it says. Businesses are able to access it first and they're going to get authorization if they are first draw where they haven't taken advantage of the PPP loan before. They are going to get primary access to it. So they will receive the money first. Then there's going to be the second draw for those that have already received it. And I'll get into that in a little bit. For both paths, the applications are going to be the same, just like the ones that were done over the summer. So businesses will still need to spend at least 60% on their payroll expenses. So just like before, so anything from wages, salaries, commissions, bonuses, insurance, retirement, everything like that has to be in that 60% category. So that is the minimum amount that you can use. I know a lot of businesses out there that use 100% of it for just salary in general, which is just fine. But that minimum amount that needs to be taken into effect is that 60%. The other 40% allocation can be used in a variety of different ways. So Crystal, if you can go to the next slide, please. It's a little bit different than before. It still has that same 40% as was before. So you can use it for mortgage, rent, utilities, you know, those general funds that are associated with running your business. But you can also use it for a variety of other things. And again, this is general category stuff. So there is a little bit of gray area interpretation on which you can utilize for. But you can use it for operational expenditures. So looking at computing needs, software and cloud distribution. So things that you need to run your business from an IT aspect. Damages that might be incurred from a public disturbance. Don't know if there's anything really heavily factored into that in Northwest Wisconsin, but that could certainly be obviously other areas of the country. It could certainly affect them. Goods, so supplier costs for supplies ordered before the loan was received or perishable goods ordered before during the loan. So if they're a food or restaurant business, things that are more of a perishable aspect can be utilized from that 40% draw. And I think most importantly, especially for businesses that are operating currently, just PPE equipment for employees purchased, you know, from OSHA, the Department of Health and Human Services, CDC, or other government officials. So face masks, face shields, sanitizer, gloves, anything that they've incurred that's actual PPE equipment that they've had to utilize for their business to operate. So you can see that there's a little bit more than just the traditional rent, utilities, general operating stuff that was before. It gives a little bit more guidance to what else can be used for that 40%. But most people have used it for just general salaries, payroll, whatever they need to keep their employees employed. Crystal, next slide, please. So here's a few things. I know this is a lot of verbiage, but I wanted to give as much information as possible on what this is going to look like. So first draw PPP loans. So again, this is for those businesses that have not received a Paycheck Protection Program loan the first time it was rolled out. Most of the rules are going to be the same, but there are a couple updates than it was over the summer. So just as a reminder, most borrowers can receive up to that 2.5 times their average monthly payroll costs in 2009. So if you had $50,000 in payroll between a certain period in 2019, you could possibly get up to that $75,000 mark. Now, the one caveat to this time is for those that are in the food and beverage industry. So really they have to be designated and that NAICS code of 72. They can go 3.5 times. So that is a big change from what was done before. And this is only on first draw brand new applicants to PPP. So if you are one that already have received in the past, back in the summer, you're only going to be limited to that 2.5 times range. So this is for those brand new dollar amounts that have not received the PPP loans. If you remember, there was a lot of discussion before. At the first time when this was rolled out, it was 8 weeks that time frame could be taken into effect. Then it was extended to a 24-week period so you can meet those salary needs. Now PPP borrowers can actually choose what that length of time is going to be. So you can choose any time between that 8 and 24 weeks based on your business needs, the seasonality of your business, how you're going to be operating and such. So make sure that when you're talking to entrepreneurs or if people have questions, let them know that they can choose what that coverage period is going to be. We've seen many businesses that get extended for 24 weeks, but in reality, they use their funds within that 12 to 16 week period. So this gives a better opportunity for those business owners to maximize the dollar amounts as much as possible. It's going to cover additional expenses, like I mentioned, operations, property damage, supplier costs, work protection, PPE. So that's going to be the same as I just mentioned. The big change this time, and it might affect a lot of you as well, and a lot of organizations or communities, it is now expanded to cover 501c6 organizations. And this is big, especially for our chambers, our visitor bureaus, economic development groups, anybody that has been tailored under that 501c6 that was ineligible before. You are now eligible, which is fantastic. So same rules would apply, but just you have to make sure that obviously you're a 501c6 organization. A little bit greater flexibility for seasonal employees just because of the time frame that we're in right now. And the big one that we're getting more clarification on, and I hope to have it in the next few days, there are some limitations on what PPP borrowers can do, but now they might be able to modify what their first draw amount might look like. So I don't know what these details are. This has just been a little excerpt from the SBA. We're trying to get more clarification on what that might look like. So I'm hoping to have more information tomorrow or Friday that I can pass on. Whatever they've had before, if they're able to modify that first draw. So Crystal, if you can go to the second slide about the second draw. So for those that have already taken advantage of the PPP before, have already done the paperwork, you're now eligible to apply for a second PPP loan. So these are going to be processed after that first round is complete. So there's probably going to be 2 openings on which borrowers can look at for that first draw, and then also the ones from the second draw. A lot of the guidelines are the same. You had to be in business before February 15th of 2020. So, unfortunately for those businesses that started up last year, they're probably going to be ineligible, from that perspective. Have to have fewer than 300 employees. I know this was a big national trend about why some bigger companies, 500 employees, 600 employees nationwide, were able to get funding. There is that limitation now for 300 employees or less. You can demonstrate that you've used or will use your prior PPP loan completely. And then the big caveat to all this, you need to demonstrate at least there was a 25% revenue decrease in gross receipts during any quarter of 2020 compared to the same quarter in 2019. So for those, especially in our region, you may look at it from a third quarter perspective. You would have to compare it to the third quarter of 2019. So that's a big thing that we need to educate our entrepreneurs on, especially if they're going to be, submitting a second PPP loan itself. Switching gears, and I know that was a lot of information. We're still dissecting a lot of it. Hopefully we'll get more information in the next few days. And from what I said, it should be open to the general lenders and credit unions and other lenders the early next week. Hopefully that's the case, but obviously things could certainly change. From an EIDL standpoint, and this is actually big news for the entrepreneurs that were able to receive an EIDL grant and then also the PPP loan. So if you remember correctly, when you submitted your PPP forgiveness, you had to check a box that you received an EIDL grant. If you received a grant from that either $1,000 up to $10,000, it was deducted from your forgiveness platform in that total loan amount. Now, because of the new legislation that was just passed over the last month, the SBA is going to identify those that have already submitted that application, and those are already going to be, those will be forgiven in whole. So what's going to happen is the SBA will identify those that have had forgiveness taken care of, and they had a dollar amount. Those are going to be reconciled and sent back to the bank where they have to be reduced by that dollar amount. So for those that received the EIDL grant in the past, and that was deducted from the PPP, that will now be forgiven. So there's going to be a little back channel work that's going to be done over the next couple of months. They should still make payments if there is a balance out there, but those will be all given back to those borrowers and those entrepreneurs, either by the form of a check or a credit into their bank loan itself. So if there are questions, my recommendation would certainly talk with your bank. They're going to have the necessary paperwork, and since they were the PPP lender, and how that's going to be taken care of. But that's good news for entrepreneurs. I know that was a big challenge for them, and there's a lot of rules that were changed, to where it is now. But I'm glad that the SBA and Congress recognize that as it is an issue. So we're going to be able to get that taken care of on that. So Crystal, next slide, please. So the EIDL loan applications, so the economic injury disaster loan will be in effect again. More money was allocated. So the rules are pretty much going to be the same, where they could have up to a 30-year term for a loan. For for-profit companies, the interest rate's at 2.75, nonprofits 3.75. It was supposed to expire, obviously, December 31st, but it ran out of money before that. That has now been extended to December 31st of 2021. There are a few different program changes. So they are looking at, from a grant perspective, to target low-income communities. What that looks like, we don't know quite yet, but that is some verbiage that was in that 5,000-page document that Congress approved. They might permit small businesses in low-income communities to receive the EIDL advance up to that $10,000. So we're getting more information on what and what some caveats to all that's going to be. There is going to be a little bit more flexibility for the SBA to verify the EIDL grant applicants. So they should be able to receive their money quicker. And then, that time frame, unfortunately, has been extended a little bit from that emergency relief from that 3 days to 21 days, just because the number of applications that have come in. So hopefully within a couple-week period, if they do submit an EIDL loan, they will receive some of that emergency funding right away in the form of that grant. And that will apply just like how I was just talking about the forgiveness. They will be forgiven in whole. There's not going to be any deduction this time from that perspective. Next slide, Crystal. So the new one I wanted to share, and this is some information that the SBA just rolled out this week, and I believe there are some webinars coming up in the next few days, is a shuttered venue operator grant. So this is a targeted grant program that's going to benefit those that are in some of the hospitality, live operator, promotion organizations. So businesses that are a live venue operator, promoter, theatrical producer, or live performing arts organization, museum, theater company, theater operator, talent representative, talent organizers, they might be able to receive some different grant opportunities beyond the EIDL and the PPP loan application. So they just need to show that they're fully operational prior to February 29th, 2020, and that they've had a 25% reduction from their gross revenues during the same quarter. So very similar to how PPP was. So this would be very similar to PPP in that operations, but it's just a secondary grant to help those businesses that are more seasonal, that were shut down completely based on some of the different regulations that were out there, to help them get back on their feet, or to get back going and recover some revenue. So there are a few that are not eligible to participate, venue operators that are owned by public companies, ones that are, in other avenues, receive funding from a federal aspect of more than 10%. So those would not be congruent to this. Next slide, Crystal. So to be eligible, they just need to be open or intend to reopen. Obviously, they have to be started prior to February 29th, 2020. Initial grants might be in the amount equal to 40%, 45% of the gross earned revenue in 2019. So there are a few stipulations with that. They might be able to get a second grant based on the amount, but it cannot exceed that dollar amount of $10 million. And up in this area, I'm not sure how many operations there are like that. For a 14-day period, they're going to give it to the first round first between April 1st, 2020 and December 31st that have received at least a 90% decline in revenue. And then they're going to go to the second round of those that had a 70% decline in revenue. So it is going to be tiered a little bit to those businesses that have had that extreme hardship for their business and go down the scale from there. There is $3 billion reserved for this operation. So there is a lot of funds that are going to be going around. What we know is some of the process and how this is going to be rolled out. So I know there is a webinar over the next couple of days from the SBA and how they're going to be rolling this shuttered venue operator grant out. But keep in mind that they do have to fill out the application. They have to prove with their receipts. So there's going to be a little bit of pre-work that these entrepreneurs or these organizations are going to need to do. So next slide, please. And I think that's it. So I believe most of you have my contact information, but I'll certainly open it up to questions. So there's a lot there.
Thank you, Andy. Great information as always. We really appreciate you compiling all of that for us and trying to kind of dive through, what did you say, 5,000 pages. I appreciate it. Any questions for Andy from the group?
What about taxation, Andy? Are the loans and the grants taxed, or just the grant portions? Or I guess I'm trying to figure that out. One of my clients basically asked me about the taxation on the program.
From my understanding, because it's a federal program, I believe was written into law that it will not be taxed, but I will find that out for sure, what that's going to look like. I believe that's what they decided. There was some ambiguity before of when the Treasury Secretary said, yes, it will be taxed, but in Congress, when the original bill said, no, it's not going to be taxed. So they did hash that out, I believe, in the new bill that it will not be taxed because it is federal dollars versus state or local dollars itself. But I will find that out, share to the group.
Great. Another question I have is, we've got some tribal operations, casino operations that have entertainment venues. Are they an eligible entity for the shuttered venue operator?
That I do not know, and I would probably refer that to the webinar that's going to be going on tomorrow, and I can share that out to the group. I believe I have a link for that the SBA sent out. Because this information just got rolled over the last couple of days, I don't know exactly what entities would be eligible if they are 501c3, 6s, tribal.
Right.
If similar to the PPP, as long as they're 501c3 or 501c6, they should, and tribal, they should be eligible, but I will try to get that information, Dick.
Thank you.
Yeah, Andy, if you want to send me those links, I'll do a follow-up email today, probably with kind of the summary of the meeting and everything. So just share it with me and I can get it out to the group.
I will do that.
Okay.
Thanks, Crystal.
Mhm.
I think Betsy had her hand up
Just so
for a
you
question
know,
too.
Go ahead, Julie.
That webinar is at 2 p.m. tomorrow, and I did share that out from SBA as well. So for those of you who may be on my distribution list, Dick, you would have perhaps gotten it in your inbox late yesterday afternoon. It was pretty recent information, but thank you, Crystal and Andy, for sharing that again. It's coming right up tomorrow at 2.
Okay. Betsy?
Yeah, two questions for you, Andy. One, when you were talking about the 501c6, are you separating that from 501c3 or they together?
I believe it is separated. So
It is
the
separate.
501c3s were eligible before, but the
Yeah.
501c6s were not. So now in this new round, 6s are eligible. 'Cause I
As
know-
well as 3s.
Correct.
Okay. My other question is, when we're talking about the shuttered venues, like some of them are one-time events, like let's say Bayfield Festival of the Arts, a situation where in order to have that venue, the organizer is basically this, it's either the city of Bayfield or it's the Chamber of Commerce. But in order to have that venue where it's outside, it's all the artists that are coming together for that weekend.
Mhm.
and they're affected by the fact that it's shuttered. Anything that they're eligible for because that particular art show was canceled?
That I don't know, Betsy, unfortunately. That might be addressed tomorrow in that webinar, especially
Okay.
those shows. My indication from what I've heard, and Julie, maybe you've heard some other things as well, is it's more of those businesses that have closed down completely or have shuttered, if it's like a theater company or a live
Okay.
production, not just the one-off, festivals, unfortunately.
Yeah, it is kind of unfortunate because in the Chequamegon Bay Area, we have a lot of artists and a lot that do outdoor art shows. So the fact that the Bayfield one got canceled, the one in Duluth got canceled, the one in, they might have 12 or 20 shows at all of these different venues that got canceled. And those artists were really impacted by that, and musicians.
I'll see what I can find out. I know I do have a little bit of verbiage that I received last night, so I will, and I have not had a chance to read it through yet. I will see what I can find out because I know it's
Thank you.
important for this area.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Okay, any other questions for Andy from the group before we let him carry on? All right, Andy, thanks again for all the info, and y'all know how to get in touch with him. If you need,
Yeah,
if you need
please let me know
help.
if you have questions. I'll be glad to help. So I'm
Okay.
off to another meeting.
Okay, thanks for being here.
Thank you all. Appreciate it.
All right, next up we have Mari with some updates from the Workforce Investment Board.
Hey, good morning, everybody. So just a few updates, sort of following the same thread as Andy. I just want to give you a quick update. These are the initial claims by week. So these would be brand new claims put through the unemployment system by brand new people filing. So I wanted to show you the trend line that's through week 51. So basically through the end of 2020. The blue line is 2020, the green line is 2019. You can actually see there's still trends that we follow just because of the seasonal work in our region. So it peaks back up again as things start to close down. So sort of for those in between seasons, and then it'll pick back up again. But overall, the initial claims are down and the weekly claims are down statewide. However, we are not recovering as fast as everybody else. So we look at things from workforce development areas or WDAs. There's 11. Northwest is lagging behind everyone else in recovery by anywhere from like 2 to 7%, depending on what month you look at. So we're not recovering as quickly. We still have more claims with the seasonal nature, the strong industry focus on hospitality, tourism, retail, food service. It's not entirely surprising, but we'd love to see those numbers go down like everybody else. Next slide, Crystal. So here it shows you your UI claims by week, or excuse me, by county. So the darker red, the more there were. And so if you look, this is the 4-week moving average. So the percent change from 2019 to 2020 for week 51. So if we go back in time to week 51 in 2019, Douglas County, there would have been a 229.5% change in the number of for the 4-week moving average of how many claims are being filed. So this sort of shows how big that impact was by the various counties. And then not surprisingly, if you overlay, we have a similar map that shows where things are at now in terms of recovery. The counties sort of match up and who's recovering a little bit more slowly than others. So with the new Continued Assistance Act of 2020 that was passed on December 27th, there's additional unemployment insurance in there. The state is still working on their systems to get that up and running. They did start taking some initial claims, so the portal is open. But you can't necessarily, they're not necessarily issuing those funds yet. We are starting to get some concerns now from folks who are calling who are shocked that they owe tax on their unemployment insurance that they've been getting and they weren't having that taken out and withheld. And so now we're starting to see folks who have found themselves in a situation where they owe tax and they don't have it. So that's going to be a challenge for some. Unfortunately, there's not assistance, not through us or anyone else that we're aware of for that. Taxes are always a certainty. So, but that is going to have an impact on the financial situations for some in the region. Go ahead and click to the next slide, Crystal. And then this is the workforce development area claims that I was talking about. You can see we're highlighted in yellow. So week 30 to week 51. So if we go back to sort of midsummer, we're down 22%. If we go back to week 16, we're down 70%. Week 16 would have been like, that was the first week of the craziness. So we are coming down. We're just not coming down as fast as everybody else is and seeing necessarily some of the bigger changes. We also don't have as many claims as some of the other areas though too. Our low population doesn't have as many claims. So that's going to be just a little bit different in terms of how that impacts us too. But I do think it's important that as we look at us as a state, as you know, oh, everything's getting cranking up and the economy's looking better. It isn't, we're lagging just a little bit. Milwaukee County isn't looking fantastic, but that would be about the only other area of the state that's sort of lagging and in the same situation as we are. I do want to mention a couple of programs. Crystal, if you want to go to the next slide. So we're talking about things that are available. There's a lot that's available right now, and it's not being tapped. So there's a lot of what is available not being tapped. So we have, it just opened up today. So the Workforce Board has incumbent worker training grants. So these would be for businesses that maybe somebody needs training on new procedures, new equipment, a new machine. It doesn't have to be related to COVID. It can be, you know, they just started a new line of production and they have a new machine coming in. We can pay up to $5,000 of the training and then they have to match that. So if they want to spend $10,000, they need to kick $5,000 and then we would kick $5,000 in. Minimal amount of paperwork, minimal amount of collection of data from the business in terms of the employees' names. We just need names, social security numbers, a couple other things. So they have to match half the training cost. And whatever transpires, it has to result in a small wage increase. So if you were going to train 10 machinists on a new machine, you'd have to click them up, you know, a nickel, a quarter, $1, whatever per hour. So there has to be some sort of wage increase. On the flip side, if they are looking at doing layoffs and this training can help avert a layoff, then we can do that too. So there's sort of different ways that we can do this. So the applications are available at that website starting today. It is so easy to apply. So we really encourage, if you're interacting with businesses and there's training needs for current employees, to pass that word along to them. And then Crystal, next slide. So the other piece is the on-the-job training grants. These are pretty neat. So we can do on-the-job training 2 different ways. We can do a standard on-the-job training where a business has not made a hire yet. If the business has already hired the person, there's nothing we can do. Where either we refer a client that we're working with, or maybe they find someone on their own that they would like to hire, but there's a skills gap there and they need to bridge that. Then we can bring federal dollars in and subsidize 50% of the wage for X number of weeks. So usually somewhere between like 8 to 12 weeks. So it can be a significant savings for employers, especially those out there right now that are maybe struggling. They have to pay $10 an hour, has to be full-time, so 32 hours per week or more, and seasonal jobs aren't eligible. So it has to be a full-time position. And then there has to be some sort of associated benefits. So maybe they get profit sharing or paid sick time or, you know, something like that. They're able to accrue vacation at X number of hours. They don't have to have a full suite of benefits. There just has to be something that's there in addition. And then we can't do like real estate or CDL. Anything that requires a license, we're not allowed to do. The other piece of it is we can do an on-the-job training upgrade, and that's for a current employee that maybe like, so if you had somebody who's doing customer service who would do really well in management, training them in to become a manager, and then you open up that entry-level position behind them. So sort of the same rules apply to that one too. Easiest thing to do is have somebody just reach out and get in contact with us if they're interested in the program. We'll take it from there. We'll work with them. This one has a little bit more paperwork than the incumbent worker training grants, but it's, again, we'll help manage that and get them through. So again, though, this, you could be talking about $2,800, $3,000, $4,000 of wages that are subsidized that they don't have to pay. So in times like this, that could be critical. They just have to be located in our 10 counties. And the person can live and work in Minnesota. That's fine. It's where the employer is located. So it's not bound on employee lines on that one. And then we have just a lot of funds available. We're looking at doing various cohort trainings right now. We're looking at doing a welding group in Phillips, potentially one in Superior. We're working on a culinary academy right now in Bayfield County, and then doing a construction academy short-term in Sawyer County. So we're trying to get individuals some of this, at least entry-level position. We know that employers are sort of crying out for some of these positions. So if you're hearing from an employer that there's a consistent need, that's really helpful to share with us so that we can at least activate and try to solve that in some way. Crystal, you can do that next slide. And then I just wanted to mention, we've been hitting the podcast pretty hard and sort of tackling some of the diversity topics that are out there right now and inclusivity. And so episode 30 was how businesses can recover and thrive, but then 31 was the cost of the closet. So looking at inclusivity in the workplace for the LGBTQ community. 32 is just sort of a chat with the workforce board folks about what's going on. And then episode 33 released today, and that one's recruiting for diversity in the workforce. And that one was really, really good. So I just wanted to mention that as more and more companies are starting to tackle some of the issues related to what's happening in the world, and looking at just how do you do more with diversity and inclusivity, then how can we sort of coach some of these smaller employers through. But main message I want to send you is there are funds available for training. There's no reason an employee or an employer should have to shoulder the burden right now. At least it's open to having a conversation with us about what we can do to help, because even if we can't help, it's a 5-minute conversation, and we can at least explore different ways. So I encourage them to get in touch with me, Scott Schultz, Melissa Repska, whomever you choose, we'll get them to the right people. So there's not really a wrong door in this particular case. So I think, Crystal, that's it for what I have for workforce. I wish I had, amazing news about where we're going to find all these people, but I don't have anything.
Thanks, Mari. No, great information, and you all know how to get in touch with Mari. Are there any questions today for her directly before we move forward?
I have a question, Crystal.
Yeah.
I'm putting together a topic issue paper for Heart of the North Advocacy Days for Barron, Washburn, Sawyer, and Rusk counties. Is there any state initiatives coming in the next legislative session that need to be highlighted for workforce issues? Or any bills that you're aware of that are being presented that would help the region out for workforce development?
Yes. So Ken, I'm going to make a note. I'll send you, there's nothing that's like, woo,
Right.
but there are a couple things that we have our eye on. So I'll send it to you, and then you can sort of sort through it and see what you think.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. I know I'm going to touch on youth apprenticeship and apprenticeship programs, but I was looking for something else. So that'll be perfect.
Okay.
Thanks.
Okay. Thanks again, Mari, for taking the time and for providing that information. We appreciate it. Okay. Next up, we have our friend Julie Fox. She's a regional tourism specialist from the Department of Tourism. I'm going to switch over to her slideshow here. Julie, thanks for taking the time to be with us this morning. We appreciate it as always.
Absolutely. Good morning, everyone. So I too have some information to share, a lot of verbiage, as Andy had shared as well, but it's kind of just to bring everyone up to date with what the Department of Tourism has been doing and how we've been helping our tourism industry partners sort of, navigate this stuff. So I have just some reports and some resources to share, a little bit of research, and then very briefly, kind of what have we been doing statewide through the Department of Tourism. So first of all, some reports that are available and have been recently released. And Crystal, depending on how this is shared with everyone, these are links, direct links. So we have annually Department of Tourism grant programs. And this last year with the emergency rule, we were able to adjust some of the administrative rules that govern these statutory grant programs. And we were able to, I'm going to use that word, we were able to pivot a little bit. And for some of our partners who had applied for grants, and these are grants to help them market whatever it is that they're trying to promote. In the case of events that were canceled, they were given an option to just kind of, put that grant funding that they received on hold in order to market or promote that event in the future when it might be rescheduled. In other cases, they were allowed to pull that grant application and swap it up for something different, maybe a social media campaign or some type of a sales promotion. But we were able to get that money out. So 1.5 million, 86 grants. And this was actually for fiscal year 20. So that was the end of 2019, which represented our best year in a decade in terms of tourism economic impact. And then the first half of fiscal year 20. So anyway, there it is. Also, in the fall, as Andy alluded to, a lot of our 501c6s simply did not have access to a lot of the relief funding packages and opportunities out there. And it was really hurting the chambers, the convention and visitor bureaus, the tourism folks that are destination management organizations. And so we eventually were able to get $12 million from Federal CARES Act money. This was in the fall. The travel stimulus grant, travel is tourism relief to accelerate vitality and economic lift. I have to look at it every time because, acronyms. But that was $12 million. And for some, beyond PPP and PPE, a little bit of dollars there, for some of those organizations, this was the very first grant money that was available. And it was strictly designed to help cover losses and to get their offices open again. So 158 grants were awarded, and that was a huge relief funding with a capital R. Crystal, if you can share the next slide. And then the Department of Administration. So we, the Department of Tourism, administered the travel stimulus grant funding, but there were lots of other opportunities that came through at about that same time, late in the fall. So for our cultural organizations, movie theaters, lodging properties, and then live music and entertainment venue, those are the dollar amounts. The Department of Administration administered and allocated those funds. And there is a link to their website and the notices of awards if you're interested to see if folks in your particular area received any of those grants. Next slide, Crystal. So Andy talked about the new stuff, the new PPP that is just now getting rolled out. I'm glad he talked about that. What I just wanted to point out is that the U.S. Travel Association has sort of compiled a summary of those provisions that would more directly impact the tourism industry. And so there's a summary there. They also provided a webinar last week talking about those particular aspects of this new relief funding package. And that webinar can be viewed on their website. There's a direct link as well. And as I'm talking about the U.S. Travel Association, I just want to point out, and I know I've mentioned this to many before and shared this link, but they have throughout 2020 provided travel industry research directly associated to, the impact of COVID on the travel industry, lodging, hospitality, dining, just economic impact in general, arrivals, hotel occupancy, you name it, you're likely to find it on there. And so it is really an opportunity for one-stop shopping if you're looking for some of that information. Now, I will mention, this is nationwide information, but some of it does drill down, and I'll point that out. So Crystal, if you want to share the next slide. So for example, Tourism Economics is the firm that we work with in Wisconsin to crunch our tourism economic impact numbers that they will begin doing once sales tax and income tax and all the tax information comes in. We usually release those annual tourism economic impact numbers statewide and county by county. We usually release that in early May, as soon as we get those numbers from Tourism Economics. What they've been doing and providing to the U.S. Travel Association, or the U.S. Travel Association has compiled it, is analysis, the week-by-week outlook on travel spending in the U.S., but it also drills it down to both the regional, kind of think Midwest, and then state-by-state breakdowns as well. So just looking at that this week, the December 17th is the latest report that I saw posted, and our year-over-year percent change in weekly travel spending is averaging, down 45% from 2019. The numbers that are available right now are from about mid-October through mid-November are the latest numbers. And, it's varied from down 40% to 47%, which is where we're at, this latest week that was reported. So not great news, but again, that's an average statewide look at things. And we know, within the Department of Tourism, and certainly you are aware as well, that there are areas and communities and counties in our state that are suffering greatly from COVID, and other areas and regions of the state that aren't doing so bad. And so, this is a big number, the negative 45% there. But when you think about the Milwaukees and the Madisons, the Green Bay, the La Crosse, those places that typically have large events, sporting events, concerts, meetings and conventions, those types of things, those areas contribute dramatically to the economic impact in our state. And those areas are suffering greatly right now, as well as some sectors of the industry like hospitality, et cetera. So other areas, the news isn't quite so bad, but this is a big picture view. And there, since March, 500 billion statewide impact. So for our, the information that we have been looking at to make decisions within the Department of Tourism and Travel Wisconsin, we are looking at these by every other week travel sentiment studies, and it really gives us an idea of what people are thinking about when it comes to travel. So a lot of numbers there, and these have varied over the years as COVID numbers have ebbed and flowed and increased and decreased. But this is important because we want to know, who's thinking about traveling, who are these folks, where do they plan to travel, how do they plan to get there? The good news for Wisconsin is that the vast majority of people surveyed say that they're going to be traveling by car, and that's how Wisconsin is primarily visited. With bookends of international airports in Chicago and the Twin Cities, people travel by car to Wisconsin primarily. So this is good news for us. And it talks a little bit, and you can look at the numbers there, and sign up for these every other week sentiment studies if you're interested. But it talks about just consumer confidence as well in terms of travel right now. So we are looking at that information. Next slide. The other way, Crystal. There we go. So again, we're monitoring these trends so that we can make informed decisions in terms of, what are we doing? And a lot of people have asked me that. So what does an agency that exists to market the state, what do you do when in many cases you're not encouraged to be marketing to travelers, or travelers aren't encouraged to travel? So what we've been doing, next slide, is taking a look at all that information. And then looking at what we know about our own information, and the metrics that we have through our sources and through our website. And the metrics are pointing to some strong travel intent in 2021. So this is good. Where throughout 2020, we just kind of paused. We continued to talk about Wisconsin. We wanted the opportunity to be out there and for people to keep Wisconsin top of mind. Now we're kind of looking to see, what can we tell people for 2021 as we all look forward to getting out of this. So we know that we're only down 4% from our record year of 2019 in terms of people visiting travelwisconsin.com, our consumer-facing website, where we hope all people will go to look for travel statewide, and then drill it down to our local DMOs for additional localized information. We've been doing that Dream Now, Travel Later mindset, and that has been working for us. And then I want to talk a little bit about outdoor recreation, because we know that throughout this pandemic, and this kind of goes back to what I mentioned earlier, areas of the state, more rural areas with, a vast amount of outdoor recreation opportunities and natural resources have not suffered as much as other areas of our state, other cities. So our outdoor activities, you can see there, people have been looking at biking and natural attractions, parks, water activities, campgrounds, ATVs, trails, and opportunities. All of these percentages are up significantly. Next slide, Crystal. And so, one thing that our Office of Outdoor Recreation, which is a component of the Department of Tourism and resides within our department, they have been looking at nationwide analysis of the outdoor recreation economy. And we know that that's been increasing. We know that outdoor recreation accounts for $788 billion in economic output. And we know that outdoor recreation employs many, many people. Next slide. And so what our Office of Outdoor Recreation has done is not only are they looking at those nationwide numbers, but they also they worked with Headwaters Economics, and they released a first of a kind report, Outdoor Recreation, the top driver of Wisconsin's economy. And that's a direct link to the PDF of the report. You can also find it on our industry website under the Office of Outdoor Recreation on their webpage. But here's some key takeaways. $7.8 billion industry impact, the amount of money generated directly related to outdoor recreation, and 93,000 jobs, and 3.9 billion in wages. So this is some significant impact that we knew going into this, and now we're seeing how the outdoor recreation and the opportunities and all the industries directly related to outdoor recreation, the manufacturers, the suppliers, all of that, how that has benefited us, through this pandemic. To address some topics like outdoor tourism, the resiliency of communities that have these natural resources and recreational opportunities, and funding opportunities, there are some recorded webinars that are available on the industry website as well, again, under the tab of the Office of Outdoor Recreation. Next slide. So back one slide, there we go. This is just briefly, so what have we been doing? Just sort of to recap, our COVID-19 response within the Department of Tourism for Travel Wisconsin, our consumer-facing website and marketing initiatives, promotion opportunities, working with our industry partners, the destination marketing organizations, communities, counties. For our COVID response, we've really been talking about travel closer to home, which has been the messaging from this administration and from our agency throughout the pandemic. We've highlighted outdoor recreation. We continue to promote our joint effort marketing opportunities through our grants that are available annually, and working with our partners to make sure that their marketing efforts kind of align with COVID mitigation protocol, just that sense of making sure that people traveling to their areas, their destinations, will be confident that we here in Wisconsin are taking COVID seriously. Cooperative marketing opportunities through our marketing department we've increased some opportunities, including deals. And we know that people are always looking for deals when they travel. Now we're really focusing on some of those opportunities to promote and assist our lodging industry, just hospitality, the dining, the bars, the beverage establishments. We're really trying to help them help each other and provide some opportunities that will drive travel to their businesses. Continued PR outreach. We just want to keep reminding people that Wisconsin is here. It's a great place to visit during these times, and a real focus on welcoming the guests. Again, going back to consumer confidence. And I think just a couple more slides. Crystal, next slide.
Is that the right one, Julie?
Next one is marketing. So, and again, closely monitoring, reopening, not only of travel opportunities, but even specifically of businesses and those types of opportunities. Providing that inspiration, marketing only in state currently, only here in Wisconsin, where normally our marketing reach extends to other areas in the Midwest, and maintaining that strong social media and earned media presence. And the final slide is an opportunity. This was released just yesterday afternoon, our winter campaign webinar. It's a recorded webinar. You can watch it at your leisure. But if you want to know what we're doing, right now to market the state, in addition to our snow report on our Travel Wisconsin website, which draws so much traffic as people are looking to see, where are the snowmobiling opportunities, where are the snow conditions great for cross-country skiing, etc. We're also going to launch into what we'll be doing now throughout the winter months, and looking at some milestones from 2020. So these updates are all available through our Travel Wisconsin news. You can subscribe to that and get this information in your inbox, or learn of other opportunities where maybe you'll need to subscribe to another email, maybe coming directly from our marketing director, for example. But whatever best serves your purpose in your role, and however you might be able to help the tourism industry, which has really suffered greatly throughout this, please get in touch with us or with me directly, and I'd be happy to help you in your efforts as well. And again, I just want to end on a positive note. We knew going in to this about a year ago that our natural resources and our outdoor recreation opportunities, and the way that all of our folks here in Northwestern Wisconsin promote them and use them as a key draw to bring travelers to their destination, we knew that would serve us well through this crazy pandemic, and it has done so. And so my thanks to everyone who has just, focused on the positive, continued to provide those opportunities, managed crowds in places where we didn't necessarily expect or plan for that. And we will come out of this stronger with travelers seeing, perhaps travelers that hadn't been here before or hadn't experienced those outdoor opportunities, truly experiencing firsthand what we have to offer up here in Northwest Wisconsin. Thank you very much. If anyone has any questions.
Thanks, Julie. Lots of great information. Yes, I will absolutely be sharing your slides with the group, and all the links will be active through that. So thanks for everything that you compiled for this. Much appreciated. We did get Jim Miller had a question. I'll just read it, Jim, for you. So he said, I've heard that the Department of Tourism is only spending money on marketing within the state and not targeting travelers in surrounding states. Could you confirm?
Yes, and that is confirmed. That's what we've been doing essentially, since the emergency order, back in mid-March. We have focused our efforts in state, and that is because even from outside of our area, you may recall there was travel bans from the Chicago area to Wisconsin, for example. Those types of things. What we're really doing is trying to be very mindful of spending those dollars that we have budgeted, and keeping that information and focusing on what we can do to help our DMOs in their efforts. Many of them are marketing outstate. And so that's how we've been trying to, make the most fiscally responsible use of our marketing dollars at this time. So Jim, I hope that answers your question, but the answer is yes, and that's a little bit of why, and we certainly look forward to expanding into some new markets that we originally a year ago were planning to do. Into Michigan and Iowa, and to some other areas too. So
Okay,
Hey, Crystal,
Thank you.
can I share some anecdotal things from?
sure, Ken. Yep.
Hi, Julie. I'm Ken Pearson with Northwest Regional Planning. I'm the loan fund manager. We do gap financing and revolving loan funds for a lot of small businesses in our area. And a lot of them are tourist based. And, heading into March, April, we were all really concerned, worried about how the Safer at Home was going to impact them. But a lot of them have had amazing years. And not only that, but like some of our local counties, like Bayfield, has had an increase of permanent utility hookups. So people converting their second homes, cabins into full-time residents. So the marketing that's been done in the past for live here, stay here, work here, I think is starting to finally resonate as people are able to work remotely, virtually. Some of them, Bayfield County, I know for sure, has amazing broadband access. It's starting to pay off and pay dividends, and certainly the efforts are well worth it. I know a lot of people who were visiting for the first time were from Chicago and Minneapolis, even against the orders. And our businesses have done the businesses we work with at least have done really well. One example is we work with an outdoor recreation apparel and outdoor recreation equipment center up in Bayfield. And they had a 23% increase in retail sales from June of 19 to June of 2020. And it was unexpected. They also went online for the first time. They have this situation where they can see their distributors, so like say Giant Bikes, can show what's in the warehouse and what's been ordered to the facility, to the retail store. So that gives them an opportunity to get inventory and supply out there. And they've had people call them from Alaska. They had one guy drive up from Detroit to buy a Fat Tire mountain bike because that was the only place he could find this bike. So he drove 14 hours one way to pick the bike up and then drove back home. So it's just incredible the amount of that tourism's actually played in our area over this last year. And certainly going into the winter months, we haven't seen that normal dive. It's kind of, the business has stayed kind of relatively steady. Everyone was expecting a slowdown, at least our businesses, and they didn't really see that slowdown, being restaurants, retail, tourism-based businesses. So it's been a really solid year. I know some of the chambers have struggled, the bureaus have struggled a little bit, certainly. But our retail businesses have done well, or most of our restaurants have done fairly well. And I want to remind you that we also have we have the Midwest's biggest vertical or longest vertical and best white powder snow resort, downhill skiing resort in Whitecap Mountain in Upson, Wisconsin. And they don't have all the same restrictions as their partners do across. I mean, they're following all the guidelines, they're following social distancing, keeping everyone safe, but they don't have all the same restrictions as the people across the border in the UP do, just 20, 30 miles away. So we have a lot of advantages up here in northern Wisconsin, and it's been an odd summer, but an incredible summer for a lot of the businesses we work with. So whatever marketing efforts you're doing are working, and keep going strong, because we rely on tourism up here, and it's it's the momentum is building and going strong.
Well, thank you for that, Ken. I appreciate that. And, you know, to your point of, you know, how some of the chambers and such suffered a little bit, but, you know, that's why we were so extremely pleased to be able to get some of that money out to them. But yeah, you know, what we all, I think, went into this with a doom and gloom, and the tourism industry is still been hit very hard. However, I'm sure I'm not the only person that has heard that we've kind of gone back to basics, you know, humanity that is, and just going outside and spending more time with family and finding those opportunities to remain safe. And it's the outdoors. And so we have those opportunities up here in spades. And I agree, a lot of people who really thought this was going to be you know, a death knell for their business or their community have instead maybe struggled with workforce issues and the availability of staff, you know, especially because of some COVID protocols and such, but also because they were so darn busy. And so this is really good news. I should have shared just one fact, one little bit of information here that didn't make it to my slides, but the Department of Natural Resources also, you know, we're reporting good news, a 24% increase in ATV trail passes, 100% increase in first-time fishing license sales, an 18% hike in visits to state parks. Although it doesn't mention biking specifically, but to Ken's example of traveling to find a bike, we know that, you know, kayak sales, canoe sales, you know, fishing poles, these things just went through the roof. And so for our outdoor recreation industries and manufacturers, some of them right here in Wisconsin, this was a good year for them as well. So, and it does point out needs, you know, again, to Ken's point, the need for broadband, the need for some of our tourism retail businesses to provide their products online. You know, I think for our state parks, it may be an opportunity to indicate a need for some additional funding in some cases for either whether it's staff or maintenance of their facilities and trails. I don't know, but these are all positive things. And I guess throughout this past year, it's been an effort to look for the silver lining. So Ken, I appreciate that. And we will continue to work with our local DMOs to make sure that everyone, we can assist them in promoting all of the assets that they have to offer to continue to bring people to the area.
Great. Thank you, Julie, again for being with us today. Much appreciated. We're going to move the agenda around just a bit. And I had mentioned that at the beginning that we may do that. I was able to ask Kellyanne to come on as soon as she could. So she was able to join us. So we're going to actually move my part down a little bit and let Kellyanne give her presentation to us today. Kellyanne is the director of the Office of Rural Prosperity with WEDC. And I think I see your name on here, Kellyanne. Are you on?
Yep, I'm on. Thanks,
Great.
Crystal.
Okay, yep, I'll let you take it off and then just let me know when you'd like me to move forward on this slide.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, you can go one slide forward now. Thank you. So again, my name's Kellyanne Blazek. I'm the director of the Office of Rural Prosperity, which is housed at Wisconsin Economic Development Corporation, but I also work across state government. So the office was created by the governor in January 2020, so a year ago in his State of the State address. And we seek to foster vibrant, prosperous, and resilient rural communities across the state and really provide a one-stop shop to help rural stakeholders navigate programs and resources. So the office is meant to be kind of a front door to state government for rural stakeholders. So if you not sure where you should start, you can reach out to us and we can point you in the right direction, either internally at WDC or federal government or state government. And just wanted to give one example. You might have heard we ran a broadband pilot in the fall and collaborated with PSC to provide technical assistance on broadband to 6 communities. So we were really proud of what we were able to accomplish in terms of standing that up really quickly and being really responsive. As we all know how necessary broadband is right now, especially during the pandemic. And so I just wanted to mention that pilot and say that we wrapped up our work with those 6 communities in December, but we're having ongoing conversations with PSC about what resources could come out of that pilot now that we have some lessons learned, and where are kind of some of the gaps for technical assistance that we could fill in either through webinars or documents or other resources. So stay tuned on that. Next slide, please. So I'm going to focus on the Blue Ribbon Commission on Rural Prosperity today. And again, the governor created the office alongside the Blue Ribbon Commission, and it was memorialized in Executive Order 65 to gather input from stakeholders on current and future challenges, develop a plan, and then report back to the governor. This was all envisioned before the pandemic, and so we really had to pivot and rethink how we held public listening sessions and how we actually got that input from stakeholders. We brought on the Aspen Institute to help us as a consultant think through facilitating those conversations and the timeline and, you know, the organization of the report. So that was really beneficial to have their expertise from a national perspective. There are 12 commissioners on the commission representing different sectors and geographic regions of the state. And I also wanted to mention that this was and is a state government-wide effort. So I was actually just on the WIS-DOT Freight Advisory Council meeting, giving an update on the commission. And you know, we had folks from WIS-DOT, from DATCAP, from the Arts Board, from multiple state agencies supporting the commission's work, both through actual staff time and helping with the public listening sessions, but also using their networks to get the word out. So, you know, while the office is housed at WDC, and we're really running point on collaborating with the governor's office on the Blue Ribbon Commission, you know, it's much broader than just economic development and really gets at quality of life and different issues that are all really interconnected in rural communities. Next slide, please. So, you know, over the course of the last kind of 8 months, we held 3 virtual conversations with commissioners. We accepted written public comments and received 45 from different groups or individuals. And then the commissioners and I joined 25 stakeholder meetings. So collectively, I think over 500 rural stakeholders participated or engaged with the commission throughout 2020 and provided input. Next slide, please. So, you know, taking all of that input, we released a report last month, right before the holidays. So it's called Rural Voices for Prosperity. And again, this is coming from the commission. And so at the very beginning, just organizationally, and you know, I hope you all have a chance to look at the report, but at the beginning, there's 10 cross-cutting recommendations, and those recommendations are actually coming from the commissioners. So they thought, you know, after all that input, like what are the things that need to happen at the state level to really prioritize rural prosperity? So a lot of those are logistically and organizationally, like, how does the office work with other state agencies? What entities need to be in place to really prioritize this and get rural input on state programs? Prioritizing the UW and technical college system, you know, and other things. And so after those 10 cross-cutting recommendations, the bulk of the report is a findings section, which is not necessarily like the commission's recommendations, but it's what the commissioners heard from rural stakeholders. So both issues, challenges, but also ideas that rural stakeholders had that deserve and require further exploration. So again, one of our big priorities in this was, you know, engaging diverse populations in rural communities, but really making sure that their voices were reflected in this report. And some of the ideas aren't fully fleshed out, and that's fine. But it was kind of a place to put all these great ideas that, you know, whether it's a state level or federal level, like hopefully we can kind of collaborate now and figure out who is well poised to kind of tackle some of those issues. So today I'm just going to touch on a few of these. Again, it's a big report. I think it's just under 100 pages. So I encourage you all to read it in your spare time. But I'm going to highlight some of the things I thought might be relevant to this group. So one of again, there's 10 commissioner recommendations, and I just wanted to highlight this one because I think it gets at some of the themes of the report and the commission's work. So it's invest in vital ingredients for a better future. And then it lists, you know, what are the ingredients of a comprehensive economic development strategy? So it's not just about creating jobs or creating new businesses. It really is cross-cutting in terms of broadband, childcare, housing, healthcare, food security, clean energy, et cetera. And I feel like that was one of the big themes that came out of this, is that, you know, if you talk to different communities, they have different priorities and assets. And so rural prosperity looks different, and the steps to get there are different for each of them. And so all of these issues are interconnected. You can't just fix broadband and then expect everything else to fall into place. And so the commissioners really got to see that firsthand and talking to rural stakeholders who said, you know, in our community, it's childcare. Like childcare is holding us back, especially during the pandemic, and we need help with childcare first and foremost. And other communities said, we don't have housing. We don't have, you know, like senior housing, for example, and that's really stifling XYZ. So again, I just wanted to highlight this one recommendation. There's 9 other recommendations, but I think this really gets at, again, the interconnected nature of all this. And if you pull on one thread, you're actually pulling on 3 other threads at least that are all interconnected to various issues. Next slide, please. So again, I just wanted to highlight some of the findings that are in the findings section. So one, recognize that there is no one rule. Again, people, you know, like there's this temptation to be like, what's the equation to get to rural prosperity and what are the ingredients to get there? And there's really no one size fits all approach, right? So depending on the community, it's going to look a little different. And so the commissioners really felt like it has to be a community by community approach and really start at the community level to better understand that community's goals and assets to help them on their path to rural prosperity. 2, again, this kind of piggybacks off of Julie's presentation. Stakeholders really welcome state investment in outdoor recreation. Outdoor recreation was really seen as a bright spot in the rural economy. And, you know, Julie mentioned some of the, you know, figures and data in terms of like increases in state park visits and fishing licenses and whatnot. But folks said even before the pandemic that they thought there was promise there and that new communities were interested in expanding outdoor recreation opportunities. And the pandemic really just kind of propelled that forward. 3, broadband is a baseline requirement for a prosperous rural Wisconsin, regardless of if we were talking to healthcare professionals, teachers, farmers. It didn't matter who we were talking to, broadband was, you know, priority number 1 for a lot of folks, just as a baseline to get through this pandemic and make sure that there's access to e-learning, e-medicine, online business, et cetera. 4, farmers face challenges moving their products to market during COVID-19 due to transportation, processing, and distribution issues. So a lot of folks talked about kind of supply chain and bottlenecks that happened in the ag space. A lot of folks brought up meat processing and when some of the larger meat processing plants shut down and folks were trying to, you know, get their animals processed at the local level, that the capacity just wasn't there and still isn't. I actually grew up on my family's farm north of Bangor, and we raise beef cattle. And to get an appointment right now for a local butcher, it's like a year and a half out. And so thinking about like, what are the workforce development opportunities there and training? What are the opportunities to support expansion of local meat processors? So a lot of folks brought up kind of COVID-related supply chain issues. And then lastly, rural Wisconsin faces a crisis in availability of high quality, affordable childcare. A lot of folks told us, you know, the childcare model is broken. The economic model doesn't work anymore. And we need to rethink, you know, that model and how to support providers because they're integral to recovery as we come out of COVID. And really it's a gender equity issue. And so again, there was interest in kind of looking at public-private partnerships and employer-led initiatives, you know, raising success stories of folks who have tackled childcare issues in their community to provide kind of a template for other communities to look at to see if that might work in their area. But childcare came up quite a bit in our conversations. Next slide, please. And then I just wanted to provide some selected ideas to explore. Again, these are ideas that came from rural stakeholders that the commissioners memorialized in their report to say like, hey, we should think about some of these or explore these more to figure out if they might work in Wisconsin. So one is to strengthen leadership training to build capacity. A lot of folks were interested in youth leadership training specifically, whether that's through like youth participation in boards or at the state level. We have one high school senior who's a member of the commission, and I think her perspective has been really important to our work. So thinking about ways that we can incorporate youth membership in local state government was a big interest that we heard. 2, elevate and share success stories from rural communities. Again, there was a real interest in learning from other sectors and other geographic regions, like what is working. And so we don't have to recreate the wheel to solve similar issues. So one of the benefits of the commission's listening sessions was that we broke everyone up who was participating into virtual breakout rooms randomly. And so folks from different sectors got to meet each other, folks from different regions got to meet each other. And, you know, we heard success stories and things that are working that some people would say, oh, like I'm in the ag sector and I didn't realize forestry is also dealing with that, but maybe there's a parallel to my sector now. So figuring out ways to kind of elevate those success stories at a state level to make sure that folks don't have to recreate the wheel if they don't have to. And then 3, incorporate rural participation in state policy and program design. A lot of folks said they feel left out and that there's differences between how programs at the state level work for either rural or urban Wisconsinites, and that they feel like there needs to be more clear and transparent ways for rural stakeholders to participate in state policy and program design so that we don't run into issues where a program doesn't work in a rural area for whatever reason. So again, that's kind of a cross-cutting high level, like how does state government generally make sure that rural folks are participating in state policy. 4, invest in gaps that inhibit agricultural market development. Again, a lot of folks were interested in supply chain issues that kind of surfaced during COVID and opportunities to reach local markets, and thinking about like what are the ingredients to get there in terms of supply chain support, infrastructure, et cetera. Foster the development of more public-private partnerships to develop and sustain rural childcare options. Again, childcare was a hot topic, especially in thinking about economic recovery coming out of COVID. And a lot of folks thought that we should be looking at public-private partnerships and employer-led initiatives there. And then lastly, provide more broadband technical assistance to communities. A lot of people actually brought up the broadband pilot that we ran and said, you know, we were one of the communities that applied and wasn't selected for the pilot. Like, how do we get technical assistance? How do we not get left behind? Because it's a complex issue and there's just so many pieces for communities to think about. And so making sure that we're not just offering grant money for broadband expansion, but also that important technical assistance. Next slide, please. So in terms of next steps, again, that was kind of a drop in the bucket, like the very quick and dirty overview, but there's a lot more in the report. The commissioners are really looking forward to continuing their work. They're all doers and action oriented, and so they want to get down and actually make change at the local level. We welcome feedback on the report. So if you read through it and think, you didn't cover this issue, or I'm really interested in this one, like how could we work together on this? Please feel free to reach out. We're looking for opportunities for collaboration to run pilots using the template of the broadband pilot with PSC with other state agencies. So if you have ideas on where to start or what that might look like, we're definitely open to them. And again, I'm willing to and ready to talk to anyone, and just appreciate the time today, Crystal. So thank you again for the invitation.
Thank you, Kellyanne, for joining us today. I appreciate your overview of the report, and I know it was shared out through email and will also be shared after this. So if you haven't had a chance yet, please take the time to go and look through that report. And like Kellyanne said, provide feedback if there's pieces that you feel passionate about. Give praise if there's things that you see that are things that need to be addressed. And if there's an opportunity in your area for collaboration, Kellyanne is just an email or a phone call away. So thanks again, Kellyanne, for your time. Is there any questions from the group at all before we move forward? Anyone want to chime in? Have a question?
Well, I guess I have a question or comment. This is Andy. Nice to see everybody. So I've read through the report. I kind of followed it as it went along, and I don't want to sound too flip about it, but I've been around a little while, and this sounds like the greatest hits from rural Wisconsin for the last 20 years. And same thing Wisconsin Rural Partners has worked on, and a lot of us in the field. So what are the next steps? I mean, yeah, we know childcare, we know housing, we know broadband, we all know what the problems are, but we probably have longer stories to tell about what hasn't worked than what has worked. So, I mean, how does the office see these things solutions being implemented? I mean, I know it says you're looking for pilots and partnerships, but I have not read the governor's details from last night. I see he's making a big investment in broadband, but is there some money that you guys are being allocated to put some solutions out there that we could partner on, or more specifically, what are you looking to address some of these issues?
Yeah, sure. Thank you for that question. And that's a fair question. And so the vision for the Office of Rural Prosperity is really to be a place where we can experiment and figure out what those solutions are. So again, we're trying to use the model of the broadband pilot with PSC, which there was no funding attached to that. So that was just 2 WDC staff time, working with 6 communities full time for 3 months. And through that, we really saw the value of technical assistance, and not just creating a new program to create a new program, but really to provide that like white glove technical assistance to help folks reach existing programs. So one of the surprising things to me, honestly, in the commission's work was a lot of folks didn't say, oh, there's a need for this new program. They were like, we know there's existing programs out there, either at the state or federal level, and like we can't get them because we don't have staff time, we don't have the resources, it takes forever to fill out a federal grant, et cetera. So we're really thinking about like that technical assistance need, and that's something that we can tackle. So right now we're expanding the Office of Rural Prosperity team. So Danielle Jones just joined the office last week permanently in a new permanent position called the Director of Rural Initiatives. Her job is to think through using this report and other reports as a foundation of like, what are those pilots that we can run this year with other state agencies? And I think the collaboration with other state agencies is really key, because a lot of these issues like childcare, ag supply chains, et cetera, go beyond WDC's walls, right? And so again, we're really excited about using existing resources and like filling in that technical assistance gap. But if you have thoughts on an issue like childcare and think that, oh, if you partner with DCF and focused on barriers to entry or focused on an employer-led cooperative childcare model or whatever it is, like please feel free to reach out. We would love specific ideas on where you see pilots being beneficial. Some of the pilots may not work out, and that's helpful too, right? To be like, don't do this because this doesn't work. But I think we're really trying to be experimental and really utilize success stories from other states too. You mentioned, there's more that hasn't worked here. A lot of folks brought up in the commission's work, like we heard something in North Dakota, or we heard this thing in Vermont that's happening. And so really trying to look at success stories nationally to figure out, is there something that we could bring here as a new model to try out? So definitely open to your ideas.
Okay.
Sorry, I had to unmute there. Thank you, Kellyanne. Thanks for the question too, Andy. I know many on the call probably feel the same way, Andy. It's, I guess it's encouraging from my perspective to know that there is an office dedicated to this effort now, and that's a step in the right direction. So we look forward to, continuing. As you know, our region is one of probably the most rural in the state. So just having the connection and being able to collaborate moving forward is helpful. So thanks again, Kellyanne, for being here. All right, any other questions before we move on? All right, looks like we're at about 11:30. I just have a few things that I want to go over before we get to that group discussion, so we can try and get you on with your day and lunch hour by the noon hour. So just wanted to kind of touch a little bit on our RISE sessions. And I know that many of you have been around long enough to remember that we, back in the heydays, we used to be able to get together and have events and see each other face to face. We had some really great sessions over the course of about, I think it was 4 years that we had these events. We called them RISE, Regional Insights on the Economy. Last year, we had conversation about hosting one. There was another summit that was planned that we sort of piggybacked on. Pandemic hit, we were unable to really look at this, from our own perspective to have something meaningful. So we were still able to piggyback on with the University of Wisconsin, the Economic Development Center at UW-Madison. They had a summit in the fall. We helped basically share information on that and served as a resource connector on that. But we met as an executive committee as we hit the new year last week, like we usually do when we talk about planning for 2021, and had some, kind of hard conversations about whether or not this is something we want to put time, effort, energy, and money into looking ahead as we look into the spring, which is typically when we held the events. The recommendations that came from that discussion from our executive committee were that we should still just continue to kind of hold off. The feeling is that we're kind of still in a climate of survival mode, that many people, our audience that we're looking to address with this effort would just has kind of Zoom fatigue. I know you all are on here today, and it's just something where we've attended those conferences or virtual summits, and it just gets to be not quite as impactful. You're not, able to pay as close of attention. So basically, we're hoping that, as things, change with the pandemic, and we have some kind of light at the end of the tunnel, hope that we could host potentially an in-person event that would be more meaningful and impactful maybe later this year. So like I said, the recommendation is that we can kind of look at this as we head into probably our, April, May months, see how things are going, revisit some ideas. We tossed around a few kind of ideas for what this potentially could look like as far as the content goes. We had some good ideas about maybe this fall we kind of take a hard look at what some of the silver linings are from the pandemic. And like Julie had referred to, we've seen some areas do really well. And could we highlight that and really take a positive look and spin on things, understanding that it's been, very hard for many reasons, economies and, just the sort of the mental side of it all too, but really kind of trying to focus on the positive. So that was one, topic that we were tossing around, really compiling maybe some numbers. Sorry, it sounds like there's a fire alarm going off. Looking at some numbers as far as home sales, really digging and mining data to try to figure out not just the anecdotal things that we're hearing, but actually present this information and data potentially. So, as far as the group goes, I hope that you're all okay with that recommendation from our board or from our executive committee. I'll open it up to any, other comments or discussion that you all may want to have, just as kind of, part of the agenda today to just let you know kind of where we're thinking and see if there's any, passionate feelings otherwise, or if you're in support of that, just, let us know. Okay, well, hearing none, you can also, get in touch with me through email too, but just wanted to kind of bring you up to speed on that conversation. Real quick, I'll buzz through our Wood Industry Collaborative update. I wanted to let you all know that we did have a meeting on that last week with that group, and we hadn't been able to meet actually. We met virtually, obviously, but we hadn't been able to meet for about a year. So it was great to reconnect with that group. I do hear some feedback coming. Can you guys mute if you're not on mute, please? Thanks. Just to kind of, understand where the industry's at, we were able to get together. I just wanted to give you a real quick overview. So many of you know that the Verso mill had closed in Wisconsin Rapids. That had some major effects on the industry. We did get some updates from Henry Schinnebeck, who's the Great Lakes Timber Professionals Association Executive Director, that there is a lot of effort going into reopening that mill. There's been a cooperative that's been formed, looking at a potential purchase of that mill, working with the community. And so there's some good momentum moving in that direction on a potential reopening of that, really looking at a way to find a long-term ownership solution instead of being bought and sold, and creating some stability in that mill. So good updates there. As many of you know that are out, recreational wise, there's, the snowmobile trails are utilizing logging trails, which are out. Logging operations are currently underway right now. So there was some conversation about safety issues, and this is something that I think, happens every year between, snowmobiles basically not looking, and they just don't want any, accidents happening out there when they can be avoided for, people just taking the time to really be aware. There was a PSA that was developed, I think, about a year ago by some folks in the timber industry about safety on the trails. There's like a 30-second clip. I shared it on our Wood Industry Collaborative Facebook page. If you folks want to take the time to go out there and share it too, I think it's just a really good reminder for people to be aware, be respectful, just, finding ways to educate people so we can avoid any accidents that can potentially come from that. We talked a little bit about the forestry in Wisconsin's 21 to 23 state budget. We heard from our industry partners that the Council on Forestry had drafted a letter to the governor, and that they were also looking for support from other associations or organizations like ours to basically, send letters as well to support supporting their recommendations that they put forward in their letter. So I did send a support letter last week to the governor, basically supporting the recommendations given by the Council on Forestry. I do have a template letter available if anybody else, counties or otherwise, want to see that. I can share that with you if you'd like to see it. And any support that we can provide for the industry is great. So just get in touch with me if you'd like to see that template. We're going to be continuing to work on kind of a social media campaign, utilizing existing resources that are out there that have been, there's so much education that's already been done by all of these different timber, associations and such, to help continue to mitigate the negative perceptions that, people have against sustainable forest management, cutting trees, logging operations. We had a kind of a large group conversation about the fact that Wisconsin County Forest Association is hearing a lot of buzz about people, basically not being educated and having a negative, opinion about the forest management that they're seeing when they're out recreating. This problem has been around forever, but it's definitely been magnified due to the influx of, as we've been talking about all day, the outdoor recreation, as well as people that are moving to our area from, out of state or out of the urban areas and coming to the Northwoods. So, and Julie, I'll talk to you offline about this a little bit, but we had a discussion about potentially, partnering with the Department of Tourism in the state to help kind of find ways that we can at least work together to share this information to help the education and awareness piece. We know that tourism and chambers have a different audience that we do as economic developers. So finding ways that we can really get in front of that audience that we need to. So I know we've talked a little bit about the the Director of Outdoor Recreation. So if there's ways that we could maybe have a larger conversation about that, I'll connect with you and potentially we can talk about that. So it's sort of on that same theme, you all know that we've had this project now going on for about a year, the Know Your Wisconsin project that was basically developed around helping educate and create awareness and misperceptions that exist. So we have just produced our third segment on that. I know I shared the first two, I think, at our last meeting, and now we're on the third segment that will actually air this Saturday. So I will not take the time today to show it, but it will be in the notes, and I'll share a link to it as well, a YouTube link so you can all watch it. But basically our third segment is devoted to the Wood Center, Wood Technology Center of Excellence in Antigo, Wisconsin. And it's, if you're not aware of it, it's a one-of-a-kind education and academic platform. It's part of NTC College there in Antigo. It's a 90-second blurb on that, and it has some really great information and talks a little bit about some of the training opportunities that are out there as far as the workforce development side of things. We're currently working on our fourth segment, which will air in April of this year. And that one will focus basically on, connecting that forest management to the products that people use every day. And this one will be looking at paper. So we'll be looking at specialty paper products as well as tissue paper, and really, trying to get people to understand that without the forest management practices that they're seeing, they wouldn't have, these things that they basically need to live every day. So that's kind of what we'll be looking at on the last one. And we're currently in planning and production of that right now. And that's all I really had on Visions Northwest stuff, so to speak. If anybody has questions about Wood Collaborative or RISE or any other, Visions Northwest, I know we had kind of a full agenda today. So there were a few other things that I can share through email, but didn't want to take too much time to actually discuss today, because I wanted to give the group the opportunity. I know we're not able to get out and network as much as we used to give the opportunity for people to kind of speak up or give us updates on how things are going in your county or area, and have that larger virtual kind of discussion today. So with that, I'll open it up to kind of if anyone wants to chime in and let us know what's going on. I'd appreciate it.
I'll start it, Julie.
All right, Jerry.
Okay. There's good news. There's some real estate. We were talking a little bit about that earlier. The real estate sales in our area, not just Iron River, but the entire area, were up. In fact, one realtor told me he had his best year ever this year. And what that amounted to basically is people were literally leaving the big cities, whether it was the Twin Cities, the Duluth area, Milwaukee. We have people from all over that are buying and literally living up here. They wanted out between COVID and riots and whatever else was going on. So I think the demographics are even changing. And that was one thing that I know Mari mentioned in our executive meeting. It'd be good to see what the actual results of 2020 were in terms of what has been changing up here. We had a high RV, camping, tenting, outdoor, as Julie was talking about, all the outdoor rec, everything you can imagine was up in this area. People were not doing a whole lot of indoor activity, but the outdoor was incredible. And in terms of restaurants, the ones that figured out early on to do takeout or curbside, they did very well. Those that did not do it, some of them are in trouble. So we had some folks that are in other types of businesses, let's put it that way, that we have a new dollar store. Iron River has 1,200 people. We have a Family Dollar and we have a dollar store and we have a grocery store, all of which are making it. And part of that was because of the tourism that we had. The downside is that the chambers definitely hurt. We couldn't have events. New members, tough to get new members if there aren't new businesses. The current businesses, some just can't afford to do memberships. So that part of it was down, but room tax was up. And the room tax was the RVs and the camping and the people going to cabins. Some didn't want to go to motels, but they did do one family cabins, for example. So they just found ways of spending money, but differently. They got creative. And then, excuse me, COVID was a real issue. It almost divided people in how they thought. Wearing a mask was fine for some and not for others. And some businesses wouldn't allow you in unless you wore a mask. So we heard all kinds of difficulties, I guess, out there, just on the mask issue, let alone anything else. So it's an interesting year. And I do believe that Julie's prediction for 2021, or actually the Department of Tourism, which we are not just a chamber, we're a tourist area visitor center also. Where we were down is a third of our visitors are from Canada, and obviously nobody's coming down. So it'll be interesting to see if that opens up and picks up. And I'm thinking summer, people are just going to say, to heck with it, we're going to do what we want to do. They've had it. They don't want to talk COVID. They don't want to hear COVID. They don't want to hear masks. They don't want to hear, I can't go to a restaurant. So it's going to be, I think we're going to have a little more defiance this year. People are just going to do what they're going to do. They're taking vacations, but they're not going on airplanes. And to your point, they're going to get in their car. And I think you will have more Wisconsin visitors, but I also think you're going to have more Minnesota, Illinois We have a lot of Iowa that normally comes up here. So we'll see. But things are, there's some doom and gloom, but most of it is people are figuring out ways of keeping their business going. So.
Yes, it's great to see the innovation and resilience of our rural area. There's been
Right.
a lot of that happening through the last
Right.
year. So.
Yep. And people want to move here. That's the big thing. The original thought is the real estate. We have two, it was a restaurant bar and they had cabins, two places that sold. And one of them was on the market for 10 years. And a couple, actually it was an uncle and a nephew and their wives bought the place. And they were from Milwaukee. So you're seeing a lot of big city coming to rural. So we'll see what goes on from that.
Thanks, Jerry. All right. Others that want to jump in? John.
Hi, everybody. Good to see y'all. I have just a couple of things to that kind of support the discussion that was happening previously. You all know that the federal stimulus package passed. We were talking about PPP and some of the other programs. Colleges are also one of the entities that received funding through the stimulus package. We don't know exactly how much funding we're going to receive yet, but we were funded in the CARES Act, received 1.5 million, and exactly half of that we served as a pass-through entity. So how that worked is the money came to the college and then it was distributed directly to students to help with costs related to COVID or loss of work. And so we anticipate that in this round, based on some adjustments in the formula and allocation, we'll probably actually do a little better. And so probably more than $750,000 will be passed through to students to help with living expenses or college expenses based on a very simple application process. So that's just something to be aware of. The other portion comes to the college for institutional support related to the COVID response, buying masks, and the kinds of things you associate with the COVID response. This round, there were some adjustments made in Congress based on feedback that was provided. In our area, we serve a lot of students on a very part-time basis. So like an example would be we partner with Mari and her team on some short-term programming in the construction area. And so on an FTE basis, we're not as big as a lot of colleges, but on a headcount basis, we serve an awful lot of people. And Congress listened to the feedback that headcount should be a larger variable and did make some adjustments to the formula that should be in our favor in rural areas. So that's a positive. And then the other thing I wanted to just quickly note is we, on the vaccination front, we have some staff and students that we expect to be vaccinated soon as part of the 1A tier in our healthcare programming in particular. And so right now the challenges are county departments of health don't have vaccine supply, and the healthcare facilities do in some cases, but our folks aren't employees of them, so they weren't at the top, and rightly so, weren't at the top of the front of the line there. But they are eligible. The barrier is actually having supply in a place where they can access it. And then we're offering to try to, and maybe even utilize some of this COVID funding to help with vaccine distribution. We run flu clinics and have nursing programs, medical assistant, paramedic programs. And so we're hoping that through some of our programs, we can be of assistance as the vaccination process scales up. And I've also offered in all of our counties to, if we ever get to the point of doing like drive-through vaccinations, using our campuses and facilities as potential drive-through sites as well. So I guess that's kind of it for right now. And the thing I just kind of want to end with is that's all good news. It feels like for the last few months, we've been talking about how to tighten things down, and it's really fun to be able to talk about potentially providing some of the solutions as we look towards warmer months in the summer. And I will say, I know the tourism thing is legitimate because all my favorite ice fishing holes are now occupied by people. There's people everywhere, it seems like, on the lakes in the area that I'm in. And so I have to kind of live with that, I guess. But I do know I can see that people are, I think it maybe was Julie who said they're turning to the outdoors and doing some of those kinds of activities. You can see it happening if you live in one of the areas where those things take place. Thanks.
Hey, John, I'm just wondering if you got that mascot named yet. You know, I did have a suggestion for you.
I can give you just a quick update on that too, since we talked about, I did update this group. We're going through the name change process. Right now we've got 5 names. We're down to 5 names. And so the board on Monday will be considering focus group feedback from students to further pare that list down. And we expect by February to have a name selected, and then the students will weigh in on mascots and those kinds of things. But I don't know if you can say your suggestion out loud, Jim, so maybe you should just email me with it or something.
No, you got that before. I sent that to you some time ago.
Oh, yeah. I heard that suggestion. Yeah, no, okay, I got that one. Yep.
All right, great, John. Thanks. I'm happy
Crystal,
to.
can I ask John a question quick?
You can, absolutely.
John, you haven't heard anything on your Strengthening Communities grant, the one for the healthcare center, or have you?
No, we haven't heard on that one yet.
All right. Like I said, good to hear some positive things, John. And I think we can all agree that, you know, our lakes and trails and everything are busy, which is good. And hopefully we'll continue to see that moving forward as we venture into warmer months. We've had a pretty mild winter. We could use a little bit more snow, I guess, another 3 to 4 inches to help with our trails right now. So just because they are getting a lot of use. So hopefully we can see that. Maybe I heard potentially this week. I know we're in like 34 here today or something crazy. So, all right, others that want to give an update from your county or organization?
John, I was just going to mention that you could maybe hire yourself out as a ice fishing guide, you know, little secondary income there, you know, there's that. Then you get to fish in your holes as well as those travelers to the area, right?
That's a really good idea, except that what I've noticed is that everyone else is doing a lot better than I do when I'm watching them pull fish out of these holes that I don't do very well in. So good suggestion though.
Andy, did you want to talk? I see you're unmuted.
Yeah, I was just going to mention when you talked about the Wood Collaborative and the Verso Mill closing, from a county standpoint, of county forestry standpoint and budget, we were heavily dependent on the Verso Mill, more so in Rapids than Duluth. But so we were projecting some downturn in forestry stumpage for the county. But at least our November sale, when we put tracks up for sale to loggers, we sold out. I mean, we had more bidders than we normally have. We exceeded our minimum bids. So that doesn't mean that timber is going to get cut for the next 3 years, but at least the initial signs is maybe the mill closure will not be as negative as an impact as we had first anticipated.
Good to hear. All right, I won't put anybody on the spot, but chime in if you want to. Go ahead, Jim.
Yeah, just real quickly, a couple of things. One of the things I'm most surprised about is that in our business incubator, our commercial kitchen is the number of inquiries and actually new food service businesses. We picked up in the last couple of months 4 new businesses there, and I still have two pending. You know, and it's a bit surprising with COVID as it is, but it's good news. And in fact, we get a lot more requests for that once they find out what they have to go through to be able to operate out of the kitchen. It weeds a lot of them up, but it's just it's encouraging. You know, and we implemented then a loan program through the Development Association, and we've been able to help 26 businesses, and we've distributed about 130,000. And that loan program continues, and in fact, we're looking to expand that beyond COVID to allow some other other opportunities for funding for smaller businesses, whether that's just operating income or equipment acquisition or anything. On the housing side, we just Central Flats is opening at 130 units, and already 100 are full. So that gives us over about the last 4 years of an additional 342 market rate housing units that we're excited about. It's really build it and they will come. And then the last thing where we really need some help, and we're looking at developers for, is that we are really short of industrial and manufacturing space. I currently have probably between 35 and 45,000 square feet requested of local businesses that want to expand their businesses. So we're a couple of years ago we had all kinds of space when we had the open Target store and a Kmart store and two former Super Ones. All of that space has been filled, and we are actually in a place where we need to build. So, good news actually overall. Thanks.
Yeah, that's interesting to hear that. Positive trends, so we'll take it. All right. Anyone else? We're about 5 minutes out. Dale, I see you're unmuted too. Did you want to jump in?
You can't hear me.
There you go.
Okay. Yeah, well, Price County, we're real busy in all the communities, Park Falls, Phil Prentice, and Ogama. At Novato, when that phone is putting the phone systems that they have with the underground, all the fiber optic cable they've been putting in, they're going to try and finish up probably the southern end of the county this summer. But it's made a big difference, like Jerry said too, about people moving in the area. So we're fortunate on that. But there are businesses in Prentice particularly, I know they're looking for people also. And a couple companies have expanded and added on. So we're fortunate in that respect, having a lot of businesses that are busy. And so I see a big trend going in the right direction from what I see. And the school has been open, which has helped. And that child daycare thing is another thing too. Prentice just put an $8.5 million addition on the school. And I believe that one end of the school is set up, I believe teachers are licensed for child daycare. And I know that might be another positive thing for our community too. So I'm looking on the positive side for what can happen now in 2021.
Absolutely. Good positive themes today. I like hearing all this. All right. Anyone else before we close up shop? Well, it's always nice to see your guys' faces. Dick, did you want to jump in quick?
I was just going to reiterate, the same things that pretty much everybody else has talked about. We're having some similar situations here. We've got 2 housing projects that we're looking at, but they're being held back because material costs have gone crazy. Contractor availability is limited. They're good problems, I guess, in some respects, but they're kind of hindering what we're doing. We're also right now involved in a teleworker survey. We're fairly close to the Twin Cities metro area, right on the border with Minnesota and Wisconsin. And we've had a tremendous influx and improvement in second homes up here. And there's a lot of folks that are working virtually. We want to get a handle on that to see, what's going on. And we want to look at it from a standpoint of a planning tool because, we're going to probably have to expand services along with some of this influx with trail use and all the other stuff. We're seeing some problems as well. We're seeing degradation of roadways and stuff. So there's going to be some need for some infrastructural upgrades. We've got those same concerns, but we're looking constantly at our broadband right now. We're doing fairly well with broadband. We're expanding it as we go, but again, it's been a long road. So hopefully with some initiatives at the state, that after listening to the governor's address, there may be some light out there to help expand broadband even further. We're also getting requests for industrial park expansion, the need for curb and gutter, water sewer. We're also looking at the possibility of a 75,000 square foot light manufacturing facility in one of our industrial areas. Yeah, things are good. Again, I think we're suffering growing pains. The pandemic has provided opportunities. We still have smaller businesses, service providers, restaurants, taverns that are experiencing some difficulty. But again, I think we're going to work through those. So that's pretty much what I've got to say. So.
Good. Thanks for jumping in, Dick. All right, guys,
Just
we're
got
at
30
noon.
seconds.
Oh, go ahead, Ken.
I just want to remind everyone that regional planning did receive $1 million program funding to capitalize a revolving loan fund. Those are low interest rate loans to help any businesses either with recovery, retention, or resiliency through the COVID-19 and beyond pandemic. So if you have small businesses that are looking at expanding or just need assistance through equipment inventory, have them contact me. We're focusing primarily on manufacturing, but certainly any of the industries would qualify for that loan program.
Great plug, Ken. Yes. I can get you in touch too if you don't have Ken's info. So I will share the recording from today, the slides, everything. You'll get it in your inbox. Please holler if you guys have questions. Great to see all your faces. Really appreciate you taking the time to be a part of this group and all the effort that you're putting forth in your areas. Much appreciated. So keep up the good work. Glad to hear positive trends, and everybody stay safe, take care, and we'll talk soon.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year. Take care.